Everybody. Today is July 11th, 2022. I wanted to give everybody an update. It's been overwhelming. There's been a lot of reach out from all of you guys via text messages, social media. I'm also in control of Dinger's cell phone, so those of you that have been texting me through his cell phone, I'm trying to give updates, but it's a little bit overwhelming right now. So I want to give an update on Dinger Shell and his condition. For those of you that don't know, on June 16th, Dinger was driving home from a job site, felt that he had a stroke coming on. He had the wherewithal to pull over and get to a safe space and call an ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, he thought that the stroke had passed. He thought he was okay, but the ambulance drivers could clearly see that he wasn't healthy, and they asked to take him to the hospital. He was admitted to Beaumont Hospital. This was a Thursday afternoon, but he did not have the wherewithal, and he was very confused, and he was missing a little bit of his eyesight. When he arrived at the hospital, he couldn't run his own cell phone, so at that time, myself and his family and his mom didn't know that this was going on. By Friday morning, approximately 6 a.m., somehow the hospital had contacted my mother, Louise Shell, and she contacted us, and we rushed to the hospital to find Dinger there. On Friday morning, or Friday when we arrived, Dinger was sitting up in his bed. He was very confused. He didn't know that he was brought there by an ambulance. I asked him if he knew he had a stroke. He said yes, but he wanted to go home. Physical therapy came in to see and assess his current position. They made him climb out of bed. We put an assistant belt on him, and we walked him down the hall. So at that time, I was the only one at the hospital with him. We walked down the hall with him. He was walking, but he was veering off to the side of the hallway. When the assistant asked him to turn to the right, he would turn to the left, so there was obviously some confusion in his brain. At this point, they had told us that he had a minor stroke, which was happening on the back of the brain, which affects the vision, a little bit of his cognitive skills. So we continued down the hallway. We found a practice staircase. They asked him to walk up the stairs, walk back down the stairs. He was able to do that, but he was a little confused, and you could see it in his face and his emotions. We walked him back to his room. At this time, it was approximately 4:30. He was suffering from a really severe headache. Obviously, he just had a stroke. Doctors told us that's common with a stroke. We asked the nurses and the doctors, could we get him some pain meds? At that time, they gave him a Norcal, which helped relieve the pain in his head a little bit, and it also made him drowsy. By about 4:45, he was dozing off, so I was saying goodbye to him. I wanted him to get a restful night, sleep, and be able to come back and see him the next day. At this point, I was thinking my brother had just a minor stroke. He'd probably be going home in a couple of days. This was a Friday. I was assuming they would run some more tests. He would be sent home on that Monday. I left the hospital, and we got notice the next morning that the nurses came into the room approximately 6 p.m., so about an hour and a half after I left. Found Dinger on all fours on the tile floor. He was agitated, and he was losing control of his body. He was obviously having another stroke. At this point, it was a massive stroke. He had to be quickly sedated, taken to ICU upstairs at the hospital. Again, the family didn't know this. The doctors worked on him through the night, got him sedated, got him to the pain meds, and because of the major trauma of the stroke, there was brain bleed as well. So they had to drill a hole in the top of his skull and put a tube in to release the spinal fluid, which most of us, the spinal fluid would go down through your brain, down into your spinal cord, and your body would absorb it. Dinger didn't have the ability to do that. The brain swelling had closed up the channels that the fluid goes down through, so that fluid was building in his brain and causing constant pressure on his brain. They were hoping that the brain tube would be enough for him, so we went through that night, Saturday night, with the brain tube. By Sunday afternoon, the swelling had continued, the fluid had continued, the brain tube wasn't doing enough draining to make a difference in his brain. So for hopes of not causing any more damage and to relieve a lot of the pressure in his skull, doctors took him into emergency surgery, cut out the back of his skull, and then stitched him back up, giving room for his brain to expand without causing additional damage on the back of the brain. At this point, we've had multiple CT scans, MRIs, every brain test that you can actually have, and all of them were showing what the doctors call a major insult to the brain, which is what most people commonly know as a stroke. At this point, Dinger has suffered a massive stroke and possibly multiple strokes. The side of the brain that this is happening on shows that it's not coming from the carotid artery in his neck. Most likely he's coming from clots throughout his body or somewhere in his heart. This week they ran a TTP, which is putting a camera down his throat and looking at his heart to see if there were any clots on the heart or if there's any holes in the heart that's causing bleeding, and they haven't found anything. So we're still not sure where or what's causing the strokes, but they seem to have subsided at this point. He does have a blood clot in his left leg that they're keeping a careful eye on, and they're going to start blood thinners with him. The problem with blood thinners is when you're a stroke victim, you need to keep pressure into the arteries in the brain. If you don't, those arteries can collapse and cause more brain damage. So they've held off on blood thinners until this point. Now remember that Dinger went into the hospital originally around the 16th of last month. We're now at the 11th of July. So we're almost a month into this. So I truly believe that the doctors are doing the right thing by putting him on blood thinners. With the skull being removed, they did have to ventilate Dinger and put in a feeding tube. He obviously doesn't have the ability to feed himself, so they have a feeding tube going into him that gives him the nutrients that he needs to survive. On June 27th, or soon before June 27th, the family gathered. We know Dinger's wishes would not be to live on a ventilator, obviously. If you know him, he was strongly against ventilators, nor would Dinger want to be on a feeding tube. He's a very proud person, very stubborn person if you know him, that he would not want any of this to be happening to him. We've had to make the decision to pull the vent to see if he would survive on his own. On June 27th, which was a Monday, the family decided that it is time to pull the vent. The doctors pulled the vent. My mom was holding his hand. She said, "I'm here, Mom's here, Ding, I love you." And as they pulled the vent out and Dinger was able to speak, he softly but clearly said, "I love you, Mom." So it's heartbreaking when you hear that, and it gave a lot of people hope because he was able to say that. So he said that, giving us hope, and they still had the drain tube in his brain, no longer had the vent in, which was better to see because you never want to see your brother on a vent. It's very uncomfortable, but he still has a feeding tube going in through his nose and multiple IVs at this time. As of this week, soon after the 4th of July, they moved Dinger to a lower level, which is out of ICU. He's able to breathe on his own. He is paralyzed on the left side of his body. We can move his left arm out and his body will move it back in, but the doctors say that that's really not him doing that, that's the body doing that. My mom is there every day working with him. She's putting a washcloth in his hand so he can grip it. It's something that the doctors advised. We move his hand. I move his hand quite a bit, trying to see if he'll move it back, if he'll grab my hand, or if he'll give me any type of response. On the right side of his body, his brain is moving his right leg in a pretty consistent motion when he's awake. He straightens his leg, he crosses legs, he straightens his legs, he crosses his legs, and it goes pretty continuously. He's very strong still. He has a very strong grip on his right hand when we're in there. I'll put my arm on the bed and he'll grab my arm and squeeze it very hard. But he also lets go of that and grabs onto his hospital gown and pulls on it consistently. So it is a little bit of a brain reaction that you're going to have those motions. As of today, Dinger is still in Beaumont Hospital. We can't say enough about the care that he's getting in the hospital. They've been absolutely amazing. And we've seen a lot of care given to our family members, unfortunately. But today, as of today, Dinger still is unconscious. He sleeps throughout the day, which is comforting for us because when he is awake, he does show a little bit of signs of pain, agitation. He can open his eyes. If you ask him to open his eyes, he will open his eyes, but he doesn't focus on you. One of the hopes that we are given is he recently said that the light was too bright. And before you could take your flashlight from your phone and shine it directly in his eyes and he wouldn't respond to that whatsoever. Now the light above his bed is too bright. So when he wants to go to sleep, we'll ask him if the light's too bright. He'll say yes. We'll turn down the lights. We'll say, is that better? He'll say yes. Again, the doctors say some of that can just be automatic responses to the questions, but as his family, we give it hope that he's actually responding to the questions. He did at one point. The doctors asked him his birth date. He repeated his birth date to the doctors. Again, a glimmer of hope for him. So we're holding out hope for that. Going into the future, what we're looking at is Dinger will require 24-hour care. At this point, he still has a feeding tube in. We're able to feed him with a spoon, thickened applesauce or thickened orange juice. They can't give him straight liquids yet because he doesn't know to swallow. When you do feed him with a spoon, he slurps and he does slurp it in. You ask him if he likes it and he said yes. And it's nice because your mouth gets extremely dry in a hospital. So giving him juices and applesauce helps to keep his mouth moistened and hopefully keep him happy. So we never thought we'd be asking this of any of our family, friends, or anything else, but we do ask that if you can make a donation to his GoFundMe page. If you donation, please share it as much as possible on social media. Tell anybody that you know that maybe isn't paying attention to Dinger's situation about the GoFundMe page, maybe about Dinger's current situation. I'm going to do my best to give you guys update videos as he makes more progress, and I'm trying to do that as often as I can. This can be very overwhelming, so please bear with us and the family as we go through this. Dinger also leaves behind, I say leaves behind, he's still here, but his mother, who is in her mid-80s right now and has her own health issues, is staying at his house to care for his dogs, Coop and Portia. They're amazing dogs, as you all know. I work in the dog world, or have always been a volunteer or some sort of dog rescue person. Dinger, his love for dogs exceeds mine. He just doesn't make it public. He's had no less than 2 dogs in his home, and now he has Portia and Coop. We don't know what we will do at this point. My career doesn't allow me to take care of his dogs. I travel every week for what I do, and I lost Nyla, as you can see pictured behind me, a year ago, and I have not been able to get another dog since I lost her. The dogs are too large for my mom or my sister to care for at this time. I do have great groups that I work with. I have reached out to them. They are looking for fosters, but ideally those fosters will most likely be out of state. Ideally, we would love to find somebody that knows Dinger or somebody local to Dinger's home that might want to foster Dinger's dogs or care for his dogs or even adopt his dogs, because at this point we don't know that Dinger will be able to care for himself, let alone his dogs. So I guess that's the update for now. I apologize for the length of this video, but there's been a lot of information that had to be given to you guys over the past month of Dinger's situation. You can continue to reach out to me via my social media. My mother is Louise Shell. She has social media and she does her best to answer who she can. And then Dinger's Facebook page is still alive and we're monitoring that, just to make sure we're trying to answer all of you guys as those requests for information and your thoughts and prayers come in. So I thank you all, and I hope that you will take the time to look at the fundraiser and share the fundraiser. And if you can do anything to help Coop and Portia, please feel free to reach out to me via my social media page. It would be grateful. We would be very grateful as a family, and I'm sure Dinger would love his dogs to go to somebody that he knows. So again, thank you all. I don't want to continue rambling on here, but there's no script for this. So thank you all for everything that you've done and all your support, and please share the fundraising page. Goodbye.